Welcome to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, your guide to future tech trends and innovation in a language you understand. Now, over to your host, Neil Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. And a big thank you to Brian_BRZ. He left a review on iTunes saying, extremely informative and engaging podcast with the folks who are driving change and innovation in today's digital world. I think I just found my new go-to commute podcast. Keep doing what you do, Neil. God bless you, Brian. I don't know where you listen in the world. Well, I do. I've got a slight clue because I came across this review on the US iTunes store. So wherever you listen in the US, Brian, a huge thank you for taking the time to leave that review. Remember, wherever you listen to this show, why not send a quick rating? Well, if you have a few more minutes, send me a quick review and I'll read it out on the show. How does that sound? But enough of me begging you for ratings and reviews. We've got a podcast to do. Now, a few months ago, I spoke with Thomas Schuten from Lisk about the Lisk Academy. And he was telling me why they were so passionate about securing mainstream adoption in the world of blockchain and crypto. And this is understandably becoming an increasing hot topic right now. So this time I've invited their tech evangelist Rachel Black onto the show to talk a little bit further about how Lisk is working to engage their vital stakeholder community and become that go-to platform for developing decentralized applications. Rachel only joined Lisk in August 2018 and she has a vast array of experience in web development roles too. So I want to find out more about her role as tech evangelist at Lisk and also how she's engaging with the Lisk developer community through blog posts, events and social media, and talk more about the latest product developments in order to bridge the understanding across tech and marketing. We got a lot to get through, so buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Germany so we can speak with Rachel Black from Lisk. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Rachel. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Neil. It's a real honour to be here. So my name's Rachel and I joined Lisk as a tech evangelist about 2 months ago, which kind of brings up the kind of really valid question, what is a tech evangelist? So myself, I've got a background in web development. I was working as mainly a JavaScript developer for a startup in London. But now here at Lisk, I'm kind of working in the marketing department, but acting as kind of a bridge in between marketing and what we're building on the tech side. And it's kind of really important that we kind of communicate everything that we do really well, especially with a highly technical product like Lisk, and also trying to get as many developers on board and excited about the project as possible. So it's a really exciting role for me. And sort of day to day, that means I'm doing a whole range of different things like, podcasts like this, also lots of events. Last week we were over in London. The fortnightly development update is also something that I'm kind of heavily involved in, our technical vlogs, and just generally being a kind of technical voice in the community. So also speaking to lots of community members and finding out kind of how they're using Lisk and sort of their kind of technical questions with regard to the project.
Excellent. And an incredibly cool title to boot, isn't it, as well? Tech evangelist.
It's definitely the best job title I've ever had.
Curious, you had to use it going through passport control yet? Because whenever I go, especially to the US, I have to explain what I do. As soon as I say things like ghostwriter, tech columnist, podcaster, their eyes just glaze over. But tech evangelist, I'd love to hear see what they say about that one.
I can see it could probably raise a few eyebrows. Actually, I haven't been over to the States under this job title yet, so it'll be interesting to see what the reaction is. It's been more trips inside Europe. So far, been smooth.
So in August, I spoke to Thomas Schuten from Lisk about the Lisk Academy. But in this incredibly short space of time, we've picked up an additional 12,000 listeners. So can you bring everyone up to speed about exactly what Lisk is and why you believe it is such a game changer?
Mm-hmm. Well, congratulations. That's awesome to grow your number of listeners so significantly in such a short space of time. So yeah, it's a very good question, sort of to bring everyone up to speed. And as people with kind of different experience of the platform, some already know what we do really well, but of course there's always people who are completely new to what we do and are asking the question, what is different about Lisk? What we're doing is we're building a blockchain application platform. So essentially we're building the kind of infrastructure to allow people to build decentralized dApps on top of. And, just to give a little bit of history, we've been around since 2016, which is a long time in the blockchain space. There are obviously other projects who are also building similar infrastructure. But I think what is kind of different about Lisk and what is really game-changing is we've had at our heart from day one, so sort of when Max and Oliver, the founders, envisioned the project, was really this idea of accessibility and making tools that are easy for developers to kind of work with, to allow them to build on this new and exciting technology. And that's kind of reflected in a whole range of different ways. So we've always had an emphasis on writing excellent documentation. Everything we do is also open source. So you can go to our GitHub repo and you can see the code base for, all of our products, right down to even the kind of language that we chose to write our code base in, which is JavaScript. And those of us who are developers will know that JavaScript is pretty much the most popular programming language, and it's the only one that you can use both on the server and the client, which does bring some kind of unique benefits. So it's kind of really reducing the difficulty for developers to get on board to language that they already know, and will kind of allows them to kind of not have to kind of learn something new to work with the project. For people who are completely new to Lisk, it's also useful to know that we have been tackling this issue of scalability, which is one that's very prominent in the blockchain community generally. And our approach is using a sidechain ecosystem. So sidechains, again, for people who may be new to this concept, it's kind of a chain that sits alongside a main chain and kind of runs in parallel but shares some state. So in this case, potentially some Lisk tokens. What this brings is it allows us to have a much more scalable system. And one of the problems we've seen with existing kind of single chain blockchains, for example, Ethereum, is that it's quite easy for that single chain to, so for example, like last year on Ethereum, when CryptoKitties became kind of the blockchain viral hit and it was getting a lot of transactions, everything was sitting on the same chain. So every other contract, every other DApp was also seeing a slowdown in their transactions. So using this sidechain architecture will prevent that situation from happening, which will do kind of a lot to kind of tackle the scalability question. But it's also going to allow developers the opportunity to kind of customize the sidechain and the environment that their decentralized apps will be running in. So that's a little bit on the technical side. And another thing that's probably interesting to note for people who, again, new to Lisk, is we use a different consensus mechanism to the one that Bitcoin and Ethereum is currently using. So we're not using proof of work. We're using something called delegated proof of stake. And the reason for that is that we've all kind of seen in the news stories just how much energy like proof of work is using, particularly with respect to Bitcoin. Kind of hearing these stories that it's using more electricity than the whole country of Ireland, which is kind of insane. So using delegated proof of stake, we don't have any of those associated environmental costs. And it's also got a number of other nice benefits. So we found it's a really good way to engage our community, as they can vote for who they'd like to secure the network. So it's a great way to kind of engage Lisk holders. And from the delegates, the people who are kind of securing the network, it's also been a really good opportunity for them to kind of become kind of heavily involved with the project. And, this summer we've seen some really impressive initiatives, like there's been an incubator launched in China, purely funded by one of these delegates. So it's a really nice tool for us to kind of engage the community. So yeah, that's a quick summary. I touched on quite a few different things, but essentially Lisk is going to be building a kind of blockchain application platform that will host the kind of DApps and decentralized apps of the future.
It really does seem an exciting space for you guys to be in at the moment. But as someone that both talks and writes about these kind of subjects, one of the things that I'm noticing more and more is if we step outside of our own tech circles that we frequent, many people are intimidated by the word blockchain and may even grimace when we even say those words. But the first rule of making tech accessible is actually demystifying it and not hiding behind buzzwords and acronyms. And I mentioned the Lisk Academy a few moments ago, and it seems that you really get this point at Lisk. I mean, is passionate about making blockchain accessible something that's really important to you? And if so, why?
Yes, I mean, this is a really good point that you touch on. I think definitely it's been very relevant over the last couple of years, with blockchain really becoming a kind of buzzword that is kind of plastered all over the place. Yeah. And still a lot of people maybe not really understanding what that means and potentially being put off by that. And as you mentioned with the Lisk Academy, it was one of the kind of big inspirations behind us providing this kind of educational resource. And those of you who kind of are new to, who haven't yet checked out the Lisk Academy, it's a free resource that's providing education, across the whole blockchain ecosystem. So it's not just Lisk specific, it's trying to kind of fill in that missing education piece. Yeah, because I think for the technology to become kind of mainstream, it is really important for people to be able to, understand the use cases of it and understand when is a good time to use blockchain. How does this relate to kind of my problems? How does this relate to, the industry I work in? So Lisk Academy is a great place for people to go for that. And yeah, we have a big emphasis on real world problems. Unfortunately, though, with blockchain, there's still always going to be some element of kind of tricky vocabulary involved when you kind of dive into the technology. So people will be talking about things like consensus mechanisms, and I know I mentioned it in the previous question, and concepts like hashing and things to do with cryptography. So there's definitely some difficult concepts, and very much kind of the idea behind Lisk Academy was to provide resources that allow people to get kind of really well worded and accessible answers to what those concepts mean. So just kind of opening it up and allowing people to kind of see what is the real world use of blockchain, and what do these words that I keep hearing inside the blockchain community, what do they actually mean, and giving me a kind of simple and a kind of 101 place to go and find that out.
And that's such a fantastic thing. We're not only talking about it, but you're giving people resources to learn and educate themselves. But Lisk also recently launched one of its biggest milestones to date with the major release of Lisk Core 1.0, which is ready to reach the main network, mainnet. I mean, can you tell the listeners a little bit more about this? And for those that are listening that are new to Lisk, why it's so important and why you're so excited about it?
Yeah, I mean, this is a huge milestone for Lisk. A lot of work has gone into this. I think in total, we've had over 4,000 commits, which is massive. It's been really important development-wise. This lays a lot of the groundwork and the solid foundations that's needed for a protocol like Lisk. And we've made some really important changes to the protocol layer. I think for developers, one of the interesting things is we're no longer using HTTP for our peer-to-peer communication. We're using WebSockets, which provides kind of real-time communication. And that's been a nice thing for us, because to integrate WebSockets, we sponsored the popular open source library Socket Cluster. And then through that, we were also able to hire John, who is the author and the kind of lead cluster. So it was a really nice way for us to kind of get that expertise in-house, whilst at the same time supporting a really great open source library. So we've got this change to the protocol layer, which is going to bring efficiencies and give us a kind of robust framework to build on top of. We've also added transaction memo. So that's basically, it gives you the ability when you send lists to somebody, as well as sending lists, you can also add a little note, a memo, which is quite fun, because you can send messages to your friends using Lisk, which is cool. But it also has some sort of serious business use cases. And particularly if we think about people who may want to do an ICO, initial coin offering on Lisk in the future, one of the things they might want to do is an airdrop, so disputing some free tokens to promote their upcoming ICO. With this transaction memo, they can add some extra information. So maybe they're a link to their website, maybe the name of their ICO, or any other sort of marketing material that may fit their use case. So that's really exciting. We've also added fully atomic block rights and a whole host of kind of improvements to our code. So we've restructured our API to make it even more RESTful. And REST is kind of something that we are familiar with as developers. So again, kind of feeding back into this idea of building technology that's accessible for developers in the way that they're used to working. And we've also added ES6 JavaScript and a huge amount of tests. So kind of making sure that everything we do is, very robust and very well tested. And in terms of kind of testing, with this release, because we were changing both the application layer and the protocol layer, it was a breaking change. So we spent a lot of time to kind of ensure that we had a robust and smooth process to go from development, testing to mainnet. And this took a bit of time, but it meant that when we actually did release to mainnet, it was very, very smooth, and most nodes had come on within a few hours, and we really didn't see really any problems with that in terms of the community. So it was really nice to kind of see all of that work and there's a huge number of commits be migrated in a relatively seamless way to mainnet.
Just for one moment, I want to take you back in time and take a step away from Lisk. Can I take you back to that time, to your own personal path, and tell me a little bit more about your route to tech evangelism?
Yeah, so as I mentioned at the beginning, I've got a background in web development. I was working at a startup in London as mainly a front-end developer, but also working with Node as well. So my development background is really in JavaScript development. And it was around this time that I also became, very interested in blockchain technologies. So I sort of did, all the classic things, going to meetups, meeting a lot of people. Obviously, there was a huge amount of development and interest in the area at the time as well. And at my previous company, we had an event space. So I was speaking to event organizers and helping them host events and find spaces to run their meetups. And through that, I also had the opportunity to do some hackathons and also start to do some public speaking around the topic of blockchain. So I was kind of starting to think, I'm really passionate about the technology. How can I get into a role where I can use my technical understanding, but also my passion for the subject and my communication skills? And so kind of tech evangelism is a really nice way for me to do that. And it allows me to kind of do a lot of things that I really enjoy doing, events, speaking to people in the community, an opportunity to kind of keep ahead of the latest trends in the industry and kind of see how the products are built with the kind of technical insight as well.
So as a woman working in tech, I'm curious, what kind of challenges did you have to overcome? And is there any advice that you could pass on to a woman or women listening to this show just at the start of their own journey in the tech industry?
Yeah, so personally, I've been very lucky with who I've worked with, both here at Lisk and at my previous company. So it's not something I've personally been affected in a kind of adverse way. But obviously, the kind of gender imbalance is a industry problem, and this is true of tech, but it's also potentially more true of blockchain. And I think maybe because it's on the more technical side of tech that it kind of suffers even more. And so it's very common to kind of be the only woman in the room, particularly when you're kind of working in development teams and this sort of thing. So definitely we need to get more women involved in the industry, but it's also a great time. I think now is a really good opportunity for women who are interested in technology to get on board. The exciting thing about blockchain at the moment is we're kind of very much at the early days of the industry's development. So it's a great opportunity for people to kind of get in at the ground floor and kind of learn the tech as it evolves. There's also quite a number of high profile women in the industry, which is great to see. Like just last month, I saw Meltem Demirors do a really good talk at Decentralized in Berlin. And we've also got people like Laura Shin and a whole number of other different women who are kind of visible and building and leading businesses in the space. But I think in terms of advice, from my experience, I think it's really great to try and get to as many meetups as you possibly can. This is something that really helped me when I was getting into blockchain, but also when I was getting into tech generally. I think there's quite a few meetups. Certainly when I was in London, there was a few meetups that were geared towards teaching women how to code and kind of gave a space for people to learn in that way. And if you're not able to go to a meetup or you're outside of a big city, I would still say there's a lot of resources online. Of course, Lisk Academy, but following kind of thought leaders on Twitter and reaching out to them. I think there are many people in the industry that are kind of wanting to get more women involved and wanting to kind of provide the resources and the environment to facilitate that. So
here you are at Lisk, and as we mentioned a few moments ago, it passed its biggest milestone to date with the major release of Lisk Core 1.0. But I'm curious, what's next on the horizon? What are your next big milestones that you're going after?
Yeah, so we're obviously working on a huge amount of things. Whilst we were working on 1.0, we also had 1.1, 1.2 and 1.3, which have all been kind of in various stages of development. I think they're all approaching testing now. So those are going to they're in the pipeline for testing. They will be released when the tests are fully done on that. And during this time, we spent a lot of time to kind of produce a kind of fully researched, detailed roadmap. This is something that our community definitely wants, but we are we're kind of committed to delivering that when we can kind of give, accurate information on that. We also, outside of core, really excitingly, we've got a new Lisk mobile wallet. So that's going to provide an easy way for people to kind of interact with the Lisk network whilst they're on the go, just from their mobile. So again, comes back to this idea of accessibility. Not everyone, in 2018 is going to have access to a laptop or a desktop. So providing a mobile interface is important. We've also got a new science team, and they are doing a lot of research, which will become public when it's kind of ready.
So we've spoken about how Lisk is making blockchain more accessible, and we are also seeing a lot of movement by Coinbase at the moment that almost seem to be positioning themselves as the AOL of crypto. But do you have any thoughts on this and how we can increase mainstream adoption in this space and bring in new money and new partnerships?
Yeah, so I mean, Coinbase they're doing something slightly different to Lisk. They're also an exchange, and Lisk is a protocol. But I think both are kind of leading adoption in their kind of respective area. Scalability is an issue across the blockchain space, and we have our strategy to kind of deliver that at Lisk. But I think when it comes to mainstream adoption, it's really going to be about the kind of quality of the dApps and the decentralized apps that are kind of built on the protocols. So if you think about the internet, people aren't really using the internet because it's a really cool protocol. They're using it because there's engaging media there. They're using it because it allows them to do the things that they need to get done. And so having quality apps on blockchain technology is kind of key. So this is kind of why we are doing what we do here at Lisk, as in making blockchain really easy for app developers to kind of build on. So we provide protocol, and we make it easy for the developers to build on, and leave it very open, because it's not for us to say we think this specifically is the best use of blockchain. There can be many different use cases, and there'll be people who have kind of the industry expertise and the particular skill base to build those, but we need to make it easy so that they are able to build on blockchain. And that's very much what we are doing here at Lisk.
Well, a huge thank you for coming on the show today. But before I do let you go, is there anything else you can share with us about what you're working on or what excites you at Lisk?
Yes, so the science team, as I mentioned, they're working on a huge amount of stuff. So they're doing research into like scalability, sidechain communication, improving our consensus mechanism. All of this will be made public when the time is right. We're obviously also doing a lot of events. Last week we were over in London. This week we've got a meetup in Berlin, and we'll be in Amsterdam by the end of the month, as well as a number of conferences. We're constantly doing new releases and updates to Hub. Also our kind of developer tools, which are Lisk Commander and Lisk Elements, which in the future will kind of make up the Lisk SDK. There's new releases coming on those. And we're also always hiring. So if there are any particularly if there's any developers listening to this, then please, check out our careers page, but also we're hiring across marketing and operations as well. So yeah, a lot in the pipeline for people to kind of continue to follow the project for.
So if we do have any developers listening, or equally people wanting to find out more information and download white papers or look at roadmaps, can you just advise the listeners where they can find out more information about Lisk and actually just stay up to date with the progress, or even contact a member of your team?
Yes, I mean, for kind of careers, all of our job listings are kind of on our website, which is lisk.io.
Yeah.
But we also have a number of different communication channels to keep the community updated. So one of the things that's been really popular is videos. So we have vlogs, and we've got a development vlog, we've got a business vlog, as well as a monthly update, which can kind of be a mix of the two. And we also release Lisk Now videos as well. Just community really loves video. It's a really accessible way to kind of find out what's going on. We also have a fortnightly development update blog, which is on our blog, which can be found, I think, at blog.lisk.io, and that's actually coming out this week. So that will provide a more accessible way for people to find out what's happening in terms of a development, rather than looking at our GitHub. Of course, for developers and highly technical people, you can always just read through our GitHub and you'll see, exactly what commits are being added to the code base. And, we're on all the social media channels. So kind of Twitter, we've got a very active community on lisk.chat. That's a great place to join if you are particularly interested in the Lisk network, running a node, or if you're interested in the kind of community projects and wanting to kind of meet and talk to other people who are also involved with the project. So those are probably the best ways to kind of keep up. There's quite a few options there depending on what your level of interest is.
Excellent. Well, having spoken with both your good self and Thomas, I love how you're passionate about making blockchain accessible and providing resources to educate people over at Lisk. So for that reason alone, there's always an open invitation for you guys to come back on and update the listeners on the developments at Lisk, and also clearing US customs, of course, with a digital title, which is something I'm sure we could talk about forever. So a big thank you for coming on, and hopefully I'll speak to you again in a few months.
Thanks a lot, Neil.
For those that missed our previous interview, Lisk is a blockchain application form whose mission is to bring blockchain technology to the mainstream through an SDK. And for people outside of that community, SDK, of course, is Sidechain Development Kit. But I love how by utilising sidechain technology, combined with this focus on usability and accessibility, Lisk is aiming to become the go-to platform for blockchain application development. Sure, that's ambitious, but it's their passion for educating the world and encouraging mainstream adoption in this space that really excites me more than anything. But over to you. I always want to hear your input, your opinions, your thoughts, your expertise. So you can email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. You can tweet me at Neil C. Hughes. And you can, if you go to my website, techblogwriter.co.uk, you can even leave me a quick voicemail. Like I said earlier on in the show, whenever I try to tell a customs official what I do for a living, their eyes glaze over and they do look at me with that look that says, you need a proper job, mate. So I'm really interested if Rachel has a similar look or similar problems when she uses the phrase tech evangelist. If she doesn't, I'm going to ditch my job titles and look for a new one. I digress. Thanks for listening as always. Let's do it all again tomorrow. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Until next time, remember, technology is best when it brings people together.